because it's doing it. What's it doing now? Stop. Okay, slide number 2. Good day, everybody, and thank you all for joining us at once again another great Power Apps Admin in a Day series and the Cape Town Meetup group. First of all, just some logistics. We are recording this call for people that can't join at the moment, and we will publish it afterwards. If you would like to say anything, please ask you guys to unmute yourselves. If there's any questions, if you want to introduce yourself, that would be great. And even if you are not comfortable in raising your voice, maybe you can ask the question within the chat window. With that said, my name is Mornay Wolfhard. I am a technical specialist from Microsoft. And this is not my hair. This is actually, in fact, a warm hat that I'm wearing that I bought a few years back. And I never got to wear it, and it's getting very cold, so I'm preparing for that. But let's start, all right? So in today's session, we are going to look at just what's new, and then also Matthew is going to take us through some monitoring and reporting inside of the Power Platform. And that I think is going to be a little bit of a show and tell, right, Matthew? But first, let me start off to say thank you all. I don't know if anybody's seen, but we've in actual fact reached 100 members on the Meetup group. So I think this morning when I looked at it, it was 103 members. So thank you all for becoming members, for sharing, as well as helping us achieve this number. Without the community, it won't be possible, right?
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Woohoo. Not too shabby.
Big. Yeah, especially if you look at when we started, this is a very new community group, and it's already reached over 100 members. So thank you, everybody. The next item on the agenda is that there was a 365 Saturday developer community event. And the great thing about it, it was a full 2-day sessions where they spoke about all the different developer ways that you can build apps for not just Dynamics, but also for Power Platform. They were going into details around different things of JavaScript, the different libraries that's available, as well as things like the PCF control framework. So the YouTube recordings are available. I know there was a lot of fans as well on the call last week around this, and it's really good recordings. There's a lot of stuff that I myself didn't even know. So yeah, I'll post the links also, but please go check it out. It's some awesome recordings that they've done, and also these sessions, just to let you guys know, there's 365 Saturday sessions that they are being delivered online at the moment. There's another one coming up about PSA, Project Service Automation, and I think this is this weekend, and they're all being delivered within the MVP. So it's a great resource to learn from, ask questions, and also these guys have really went through the showing the art of what's possible, and also going through a lot of great content. Some of the things, the key takeouts for me was the use of things like unit testing, the XRM framework, also things like easy repo, building business cases, all those type of things. So in case you're a developer and you're looking into that, just for guys that's on the call that don't know, easy repo is like a UI testing framework that Microsoft released to test the model-driven apps. So it's a great way of doing things like that. And then also something that have moved. So they've moved the Power Apps portal from the Power Apps Admin Center. So you would now need to go into the Power Apps Admin Center and then go under Environment and then Resources in order to get and manage your portal instance. I believe previously it was done differently. It was a lot more difficult previously to manage it. So this is a great change that was introduced. For those guys that are not, that doesn't know anything about the Power Apps portals, how to spin it up, please let us know and we can have a session on that. It's a really powerful, platform that I think that is released now, and also great for guys that want to use it to integrate into things like the CDS, have things like self-service portals, etc., etc. So please let us know. Then also something else to note is voice of the customer has been deprecated as of the 1st of July. And it's been replaced with Microsoft Forms Pro. And the important thing here is voice of the customer used to be, our survey engine. It did a lot of things like what Forms Pro used to do. It was built from within Dynamics CRM. And it was a great product for what you can do. But, when Forms Pro came out, we took a lot of that functionality, we integrated it, and also made it a lot simpler to build questionnaires and survey forms and responses. So please take a note of this in case any of your customers are using still voice of the customer. All the material will be made available afterwards. So if you want to go read up on, what does it actually means, deprecation of a product, or voice of the customer, then the links are available. And that is all from my side at the moment. So I'm going to give it over to Matthew. Is there any questions from anybody on the chat? I see you guys are asking for links. I'll post that. And I'll also share the slide deck. Yeah, sure.
Matthew, Forms Pro. I've come across it, but I don't understand the difference between Forms Pro and Forms that's available in Office 365, for example. Can you give us a hint? Do you know?
Sure. The one's got the word pro with it. No, the main difference is, you get normal Microsoft Forms that comes with the Office 365 stack. And then you get Forms Pro that makes use of the Common Data Service. So all your responses and all your changes can be tracked within the Common Data Service. And the great thing by utilizing the Common Data Service for that is that you can link that now back into things like Flow. You can build out, for instance, if you use Dynamics 365 for marketing, you can ask somebody to complete a survey, and then based on that survey answers, you can do specific logic. So let's say I ask you guys, how was this community session? People respond back. I can tie that back to a specific person, and I can look at the answers and do specific actions on top of that based in the CDS. So a long and a short answer is there is quite a few differences in the product set, but the main big difference is utilizing the CDS to get that full roundness of, the answers and the questions and those type of things. Yeah.
Okay, that explains it, because from what I could see, from a user interface or a front end perspective, it looked the same, almost identical. Probably a couple of different things from inputs or question types that you could have in your forms, but I didn't know the back end difference, and that explains it perfectly. So now I understand. Thanks.
We used it in a Dynamics marketing customer journey, and it's pretty awesome because you can, for instance, send somebody an email, then you can track if they open that mail, and you can send them in that mail. You can send them, for instance, an invite to an event, and then if they joined, then you can send them out a survey to say, how was this event, for instance, and then based on the answers, you can build out another, like a journey to say, rather not send this guy another email or invite him to the event, or promote to him, specific things like he likes the products or he likes the presenters or whatever the case might be. So that is very powerful in a case where we can do those type of things. I know that we use Forms Pro internally quite a lot. with things like, just gathering information, sending people out surveys, asking, anything and everything essentially, right? From collecting your petrol card to whatever else it is, right? So, and they're developing quite a lot of new feature set within Forms Pro as well. I don't know, Roger, if you've got anything to add onto that.
Am I right that I think if you want to do the analytics in Power BI, you need Forms Pro to actually store the data? Otherwise, it basically just sits like in SharePoint somewhere.
Oh, I'm not exactly sure, but it makes sense that, because it's in the CDS, then you would use Power BI on top of that. But it depends what type of analytics, right? So if you just want to view the responses and who responded and all those type of things, then you can just do it within the product itself.
Yeah.
So, Matthew, I'm not going to waste any more time. Is there, can you present?
I will do so.
Cool. Thank you. Good luck, sir.
Thank you. So I'll switch my camera on for a second so everyone can see what I look like. And also the lighting is a bit bad at the moment because I've got sunlight behind me, so I'm probably more of a silhouette than anything. Oh, it's awesome to see 9 little icons in the Teams screen. Apparently that's going up to like 49 at some point. That'll be interesting to compete with Zoom. Anyway, cool. Camera off again, and you should be able to see my presentation, which says monitor Microsoft Power Platform. Can I just get a confirmation, please?
Yep, all good.
Yep,
Awesome.
good.
Great, thanks. Okay, so my name is Matthew. I'm a solutions architect for NB Consult, and primarily focus on security, identity, governance, and in many fields. So Office 365, Azure, on-premises. I have an Exchange and Active Directory background. So I'm an administrator of sorts, but from a governance perspective, I need to understand how to secure environments and how to monitor those environments. And governance to me means to protect and make sure that things don't cost too much. So I need to understand costs as well as security, make sure the right people have access to the right data, and so that external parties don't have access to things that they shouldn't have, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of my functions, or a list of my functions. From a Power Platform perspective, I'm pretty new to the Power Platform. I've played with some of the Power tools, the Power Automate, the Power Apps, and basically I have an understanding of the functionality, but for me to administer and also speak to my customers about governance and security, I took it upon myself to learn and go through a journey of understanding environments, how to secure environments, and monitoring. And so this is where I am in the journey. So forgive me if I say anything wrong. I don't know everything that there is to know about the Power Platform. Most of you probably know more than I do, but I am presenting basically a journey, but also what I am in the process of learning at the moment. So from an admin perspective, last session we spoke about securing our environments and our tenant, and today we're going to speak about monitoring, and this is part of governance. So with that, what we plan to cover in the monitoring session today, and I'll just give you a heads up, it's not a very long session. So we'll look at what's available natively, and then we'll also try and have a look at some of the Center of Excellence dashboards that one can utilize in Power BI from a monitoring perspective, and we will take it from there. So what we hope to achieve today is just review what's there out of the box, the native capability, some of the other logs or auditing that you might not be aware of exist in Microsoft 365 or Office 365, and then how we can leverage some of the tools and the connectors to provide more reporting. So let's monitor. So I've got two screens here, or three screens, sorry, and two of the screens are what you can use natively. So from an admin portal perspective, in the admin center, you've got some insights into what your users are doing, what capacity you have on your environments, and some of the locations of Power Apps and some of the Power tools. Then you've got some analytics within that where you can track the health and implementation metrics and get some level of error reporting and app usage. Then on the right-hand side, we've got a third screen, which is more deep analytics or insights using custom Power BI reports. And we'll look at those Power BI dashboards later on, but this is essentially what we have from an insights perspective. So logs and analytics, you can access logs and analytics from there are logs available to one in Office 365 or Microsoft 365. There are the unified logs, which you can get through the security center. I think it's Security and Compliance Center in Office 365. Those logs, depending on the age of your tenant, are either on by default or not. The newer tenants these days, the audit logs are on by default. Older tenants, and there is a specific date that it documents, older tenants, those logs are off by default and you have to switch them on. When you switch them on, they are logs that are tenant-wide. So they don't only apply to the Power Platform, they apply to all of your Office 365 or your Microsoft 365 tenant. And there are specific logs that pertain to Power Automate and Power Apps. There's obviously an endpoint to it, a REST endpoint. So you can, there's an API, you can integrate those logs into a third-party system or export them. And CDS, which is the common data source, is focused on the database and model-driven app user activity, whereas Power Apps is targeted towards Canvas apps. We just need to point out that the data is stored within the region that your environment is hosted in. So when you spin up an environment, you specify the region of the environment. The data pertaining to that environment is stored along with that environment in that region. So, sorry, I just need to minimize the little Teams guy. It's getting in the way. So Power Apps Analytics, the usage tab will provide you with insights into how much the app is being used and when. And additional analytics can be found in the Maker portal if the app has been shared with you. The location can give you insight into where the app is used from. So what kind of apps or what kind of devices and where these apps are being used. Toast errors can give insights into errors users might be seeing. So if users report problems with an app but don't have specifics, this is a good place to look to see if there are any errors occurring. Service performance would give you insights into the performance of each connector. So for example, users reporting the app is slow, you can check here to see the performance of each connector for the app that the app uses and look for one with high average times.
So Matthew, I've just got a question on the previous slide. Am I correct in saying if I've got a large organization, that's for instance in Joburg, Cape Town, and Durban, and I roll out a Power App and I want to actually see if the people are using it, this is the way that you'll do that?
Yeah. So you would see the usage, based on the number of users as a start, where it's being launched, and also physically where it's being used. So the sign-in logs or the activity logs from within the audit logs would give you that information based on where it's being used.
Okay,
At least that's my understanding.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. Because I think that the important thing here is also we get a lot of people that are app makers, and they deploy these apps, but then they don't know what's the utilization of those apps. If business are using them, and what's the experience from the guys. So this is a great way of doing it.
Look, just remember that this data is only stored for 28 days and it's refreshed daily. So it's a rolling 28 period. It's like a snapshot. So, it doesn't give you that information historically over time, only in the last 28 days.
Okay. That's cool. Thank you.
Cool. So CDS analytics, common data source analytics, there's details on definition of chart elements can be found here. There's a link to what kind of chart elements you have, and perhaps I must grab the link and post it in the chat if I can do that. Can't seem to do that. But essentially, these analytics would help you to understand your CDS workloads. So active users can help you understand the peak times of the day and what your active user base is. So it can also help you to understand the mix of modifications versus read activity. And plugins and API calls can be helpful to share with your development team to understand how their extensions impact the environment.
Sorry, if I can make a comment on that. This is very, very powerful, the analytics side of the CDS. We get quite a lot of requests for people that still use on-prem that needs to figure out, how busy is their current workload. And, if you move to cloud, you just get these out of the box functions, so you just know, for instance, how many API calls were there, how many active users were there, system jobs, all those type of things, where previously you had to go through quite a lot of either monitoring software or SQL logs or IS and those type of things to get this type of information. So this is a very powerful, analytical center if you start digging more into it, especially if you want to see when's your peak times and also just how many users are actively using this system, and what can you do to get more users to use the system, etc., etc.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just posted the link to the definitions of the chart elements in the chat. So Power Automate Analytics can give you more information, usage, created, errors, shared. Usage will provide you insights related to the types of flows that are in use. This includes button, scheduled, and system event flows, all broken down by the number of runs and the trend over a configured timeline. Then created provides insight into the different types of flows that have been created. This includes buttons, scheduled, and system event flows, all broken down by the number of runs and a trend over a configured timeline, which is very similar to usage. Errors, however, provides insights into flows that may be experiencing issues. So I don't know how many of you have seen sometimes you log into your Flow admin center or your flows.microsoft.com, and it pops up saying that one of your flows is broken or a connector within your flow is broken. So this will break down those errors. It'll break down the errors into error type so that you can look for common problems that may exist. This might be something that you need to discuss with the maker so they can look at the detail for that flow. Then shared provides insights into the flows that have been shared within an environment. It includes information. Included information will be the type of flow, including button, scheduled, or system events. Now with log analytics or logs and analytics, you can see what is happening. So the idea of monitoring is to be able to see what is going on in your environments and see the health of your environments and your apps and flows. You can also download analytic data. But in the previous session, we spoke about 3 of the best practices, and this is best practice number 4, and that is to run the Center of Excellence or the COE Starter Kit, because from a monitoring perspective, you have the Power BI dashboard. It creates a Power BI dashboard, and I will just show a few slides, and hopefully if Ewan is on the call and can present, he's got some examples of the Power BI dashboard and just show a little bit of detail of what's in there.
Yeah, I'm on the call and I can show, so just let me know when you want me to do that for you.
Cool. Well, so I'll just speak to this slide. Thanks, Ewan. And essentially, from a monitoring perspective, what we want to monitor is the capacity, storage capacity, for one, amongst other things. So we've seen usage reporting and monitoring, but we also want to monitor storage. You can create additional instances. So as long as you've got capacity, instances can be created, but if you don't have capacity, you wouldn't be able to create new instances or environments. And this is something that I have come across myself. I am unable to create new environments because I don't have capacity. The new storage report or capacity report is available in the admin center, and it will outline entitlements and usage for database, file, and log capacity. Apparently, there is an old way of looking at the database capacity, and new environments don't need to do anything. They will be transitioned to this new capacity report, and essentially the new capacity report takes into consideration file and log capacity separate from your database. So it frees up the capacity for the database utilization. So database size limitations don't apply to file and log capacity. Okay, Ewan, if you would be able to show us some of the Power BI functionality on the Center of Excellence.
You specifically want to cover the Power BI piece?
Yeah, please. Or, you know, if there's any other monitoring stuff that you would like to show us in the Center of Excellence components.
Okay. So that Center of Excellence, and I think you've already put a link on that from the slide onto the message window. It will probably be good to put a link again, and after I've presented this, if it's not there, I'll add it as well.
I'll do that right now.
The kit. There's obviously a couple of components that makes up the COE kit. The most essential piece that is really needed to get this functionality that Matthew's asked me to show you is what we call the core components. So the core components allows you to do the additional analytics and gives you the Power BI report. It's implemented as a solution. So as that kit gets updated, you're able to then update the solution into your environment as well. So I've added it into, I've created an environment for it, and I've added the solution into it. And once you do that, there's a couple of apps that you get installed as part of the kit for the core components. One is this admin view, and then you also get this DLP customizer and DLP editor. DLP editor is quite nice, allows you to edit your DLP, but it also allows you, if you look at the standard way you apply DLP, for example, if you've got lots of environments and you apply a new policy, you don't always know how that DLP policy that you're applying is going to affect existing applications that's using certain connectors, etc., within those environments. So this editor is a nice way to be able to do that. When you kind of put in the details for the policy, it will give you a scenario where it will kind of show you what apps will be affected by that new policy. So that's actually pretty useful. So that's a nice little app that comes with it. But the app I want to show you is the Power Platform Admin app. This is a model-driven application that comes as part of the solution. So the first kind of page on the monitoring is the overview dashboard. This gives you a kind of overview of your makers in your environments. You can see who your top makers are, your active environments, and gives you a sense of the number of apps and number of flows. So blue obviously being the apps, and your flows are in orange for the different environments that you have configured in your tenancy. And you can also see active makers in terms of, you can see in my tenant, I'm only using one user. That's what I'm licensed for. So Megan Brown is going to be the top maker in almost everything, because everything I use is, or build is using Megan Brown. So that's the only license I've got in this tenant. But I think you can get the sense of what this looks like. Then diving into apps, let me sign in again because I've logged out earlier. Cool, let's wait for that to do it. Really? Okay, cool. Just close that. All right. Let's do it from here. I'll launch it out again. Okay. That should take me straight in. Yeah. Come on. There we go. All right. So that takes me in. Looking at the apps area, I can see all the apps that I've got in the various environments. So you can see these apps per these environments. I mean, you can obviously filter these as well by a certain environment that you want to see. But let's just look at, like this app, for example, I built the sentiment analysis app. What is quite nice, if you're doing a COE and you've got certain criteria that you're going to validate apps, this is quite nice because you can actually have a business process to validate the requirements for those apps to see if there are any risks before you move them into like an app catalog. So you can see, for example, this thing has been sitting for 49 days in the maker business requirements stage because you got to do a check to see if the maker provided certain business requirements, whatever that's been defined by your COE. And then once you confirm that, you can go to the next stage, and then it's doing the risk assessments of the app. And so you can get an app through a business process to get it into an app catalog. That's nice for organizations that got a defined COE. You can do similar stuff for flows, etc. You can also check the total number of environments and all that. And then this last piece is how you configure it. The one piece that Matthew asked me to show you was the Power BI dashboard. So this is quite nice because this you can share with kind of like, I suppose, management level within an organization. And they literally just want to be able to get a report and see kind of, you know, are we tracking on the low-code platform? You know, how's it being used in the organization? And to the point that was raised by Morna early on about seeing, you know, usage, etc. So this is a great way for them to just get a quick overview check the key indicators, see they've got total environments, check the number of makers that you have, and you can track and see how this is growing. And you can even see where these makers are on a map. Obviously, if you're a global organization, makes more sense. If you're a single organization, it's not going to be of much use to you. And then you can filter this down to environments and see on the environment what the apps look like and how many apps you got and flows within all of those, and then diving specifically into apps. So this is a little bit less detail than what you can see in that model-driven application. But I suppose if you're looking at it from a reporting perspective, then management just wants to normally see, you know, the metrics around these kind of things. And it gives you good view. There's filters as well. And you can set up, obviously, the refresh business in CDS. You can set that refresh up. I've got the set daily, but I think I got the flow off. So the last refresh was on the 5th. Matthew, is there anything else you wanted me to cover or wanted to see specifically? Just note also custom connectors is now reported on as well. We didn't have that before. It's quite nice to report. So I built, I think I got about 1 or 2 custom connectors. Yeah, I've got 2. So I can basically track custom connectors, and most organizations want to track that as well. Tracking makers is also quite nice. You can check the trend to see how the makers have increased and how many apps and flows they've created.
That's awesome, Ewan. Thank you very much. Yeah, there's so much in there. I mean, the components that you add there are so useful, and it's great to see it actually, you know, in action, that you can actually touch and feel almost. So yeah, thanks for showing us that.
All right, cheers. Screen is back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, are there any questions while I'm busy getting my screen up? So I just want to show that, so the Center of Excellence Starter Kit, we've spoken about it. Ewan explained, you know, that there's a couple of components that you can install. The idea of the Center of Excellence Starter Kit is it has a couple of tools that you add into your Power Platform and that you can leverage, that you can use for reporting, for DLP, for example, setting policies. So there's advanced features and functionality within the COE Starter Kit. And so this page that I'm on is just an overview of the COE Starter Kit. And this is what I linked to in the chat. But you can see that there's actually a couple of components. So if we look at the core components, what you will need is an environment that you can create a database in. Let's go to these core. So these are some of the environment or the additional things that you can add into your Center of Excellence. So the core components, the governance components, that's where you get the DLP stuff, nurture components, so that you can drive usage, drive makers to create. It's nudging and getting people to use the facilities, use the functionality, and then there's the Power BI dashboard. While I'm in my browser, I'm just going to show you the audit log search in the Security and Compliance Center. If it is not enabled by default, there would be a yellow banner at the top here saying that you need to enable it. And once you click enable, it's enabled. You can't switch it off again, and that yellow banner disappears. But for new tenants, it's like it is now. You don't have to action. There's no action required. And then the activities that you can search from would be power related. So Power BI activities. I don't know if it has Power Apps. Automate. Not seeing them there. Maybe I didn't wait long enough. Data flow. No. Oh, there we go. Power Automate, created flow. So, you know, these are the activities that you can access from your audit logs. Alrighty. I'll go back to the presentation.
Sorry, Matthew.
Yeah.
I just want to check. In order so the Security and Compliance Center that you just shown us,
Yeah.
that is this product set by itself. It's part of the Office 365 or Microsoft 365 suite, right?
Correct.
And it's not. I mean, there's no dependency between Power Automate or Power Apps and that. The only thing that happens is that any events that's generated by these platforms flow into the flow through the Security Compliance Center, correct?
Yeah, because it's so essentially if you subscribe to a platform, be it Power Automate or Power Apps, and I'm not sure that you can subscribe to those on their own, but you will be created in a tenant, or a tenant will be created for your organization. The tenant then has a basic administration page. So historically, a lot of those admin workspaces were completely different URLs, and you would get to them from different places, but they're trying to consolidate them into one admin center. This is what they call the Mac, or the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, not the Apple Mac. And from within the Mac, you can access the different workspaces. So on the left here, you've got your nav bar, where you can access your users, etc., and settings. And then you've got your admin centers down here. So wait, I meant to show all. So Security and Compliance used to be a separate dashboard or a separate URL. And if I go here, you'll see that it's now protection.office.com. If I go into security, there's a security.microsoft.com, which redirects to protection.office.com. But there's also a compliance dashboard, which goes to a separate one, compliance.microsoft.com. So depending on what you have, and it all depends on your licenses, you would have access to different admin workspaces, they call them.
Okay.
And so the Security and Compliance workspace is protection.office.com. You can get to it directly, but this is where you would see your audit logs under search, audit log search. And there's a whole lot of other things that you can do within Security and Compliance Center, create classifications, data loss prevention policies, and it all depends on what workloads you have in this tenant. And so this tenant that I'm showing you right now is a Microsoft 365 enterprise tenant. So I think it's an enterprise tenant. Yeah, it's an E3.
Okay. Is E3 the minimum, right?
No, not necessarily. You can get, well, if we're talking about enterprise, yes, E3 is the minimum. But you've obviously got your business SKUs as well.
Yeah.
And I by no means am a licensing expert, but I can talk to some of the differences between Microsoft 365 Business, Enterprise, and then there's obviously education as well. And we're seeing a lot of the educational SKUs right now because of people that have children doing school at home, and their schools are running Microsoft 365 Edu SKUs.
Okay.
So that's a whole different kettle of fish, so to speak.
So I just want to maybe ask something else, right? So in that security compliance center, I think there were things that caught my eye, like GDPR and those type of things. So
Yeah,
am I correct in am I correct in saying that in a case where, for instance, there was a breach of data, right? So somebody got my data or whatever, or I need to find out exactly what's the data points that you have on me, I can essentially go and search these log files to see what's the activities that you had on my records.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Not you necessarily as a user, but an administrator. Yes.
As an administrator, yeah.
Yeah.
Data.
You know, so yeah, we just have to clarify that as a user of something that captures the data, and your personal data is within a database or an app or whatever, you wouldn't be able to go and see it, but you would be able to request it, and an administrator would need to provide that, I suppose. Yeah, GDPR is also another thing that I don't want to talk about because I might say something wrong and get into trouble.
Maybe just so to clarify as well, if I may.
Please.
I know you guys mentioned earlier on about, and I think when I asked the question around E3 and etc. So although you have on a tenant, you've got security and compliance, the portal, the admin center. It's important to note that what surfaces in there and the capabilities that you can configure will depend on your underlying licensing and also depending on those users. So, for example, if you've got certain users that's got E1, not E3, then there are certain security and compliance capabilities that you won't be able to configure for those users, whereas the capability will be there, but you can only configure them for users that's got E3, or they can leverage it. So it will depend on the user capability, because there is variances between those different licensing in terms of the capabilities that they have from a compliance and security perspective. But just keep that in mind.
Okay, thanks, Ewan.
Yeah, thanks, Ewan. Okay, cool.
This is interesting because the COE will give you the ability to see exactly how many people created apps. You can probably take that a step further to have people request that they create apps, and you make a little playpen for them, those type of things. And then this will essentially tell you what those apps did, you know. So did somebody in my organization post sensitive information on Twitter, or emailed ID numbers, or whatever the case might be?
Yeah, so the Center of Excellence it is quite critical to monitoring and administration from a security perspective and understanding the workload. So yeah, you're absolutely right. But you know, there are tools available to you natively, but this Center of Excellence will just beef up what is available to you, and I think it's quite substantial. It's not like just a little add-in. It's quite substantial.
And maybe if I could just add to that, I think it's probably the starter kit is less about the monitoring, because I think we've beefed up, as you mentioned, the analytics within the Power Platform Admin Center. There's got a lot of that capabilities for usage and that kind of thing. I think where the COE Starter Kit really comes in its own is it's got a lot of pre-built templates and flows that can automate tasks and processes to administer environment. In other words, it's got pre-built flows that will go and check to see stale flows or stale apps that haven't been used for a certain period of time. Then those users can be prompted, and you can have checks to say, if you haven't used this app for like 1 or 2 months, can this be removed, because we can save capacity in the environment. So you've got all those automation tools. Look, you can use the base setups in terms of building your own, creating your own flows and using PowerShell scripting and that kind of thing. But it means you have to build and construct all of that. Whereas the starter kit, straight out of the box, it's got all those tools that easily enables you to do that. one of the key things, for example, when somebody leaves an organization, they build some great apps that others use, but they were the owner of the app. So how do you take ownership of that app? So, for example, one of the tools that comes with the kit is being able to go and take ownership of an app and assign the ownership to another user, for example. So those are the tools that are really useful. Full disclosure, the COE Starter Kit, though, to implement it, it is built on CDS. So the fact that it's built on CDS doesn't mean that it needs a premium license. So your premium license that comes with your Office 365 will not allow you to install this kit. You do need a premium license for it. So but it is really well worth it. And it doesn't mean that every user has to have it, because the idea is for your key administrators, or let's say your COE, there's normally about maybe 2 or 3 administrators that manage the entire environment. They're the ones that actually needs those licensing to be able to do that and administer. But it's really worth the investment. Just add that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ewan. And unfortunately, I've only got a demo tenant and an Office 365 production tenant where I can't deploy the COE into. So I haven't been able to actually play with it. And so it's great to get the insights from you on the value of the Center of Excellence, because I haven't been able to see it for myself. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my presentation quickly. Hopefully we still have some time. All right, so you should be able to see some of the analytics that we can get from the Power Platform. So we spoke about the Power Automate Maker reports, so you can get some analytics on usage and errors. And then from a Power Apps perspective, usage and errors, and also Power Apps Maker reports, you can see app performance, location, etc. Then there's the Maker self-service app updates. So Power Automate Makers can get usage from usage reports and errors, and there's email updates where you can email with usage info for top performing apps. Also includes recommendations on how to make improvements using new features. So I did speak about the Office 365 activity logging. Essentially, that's your security and compliance center. You can use these logs and integrate them into a database, but you can also get information from your CDS data activity logging, and from that you can create actions. So there are 2 types of audit logging. Those are the Office 365 activity logs, and then there's the CDS environment logs, or CDS audit logs, and they can be configured to monitor user usage and modification of CDS entities, etc. And so one could use resources like flows or Canvas apps to present the data or action on the data. This is just a view of what we saw in the Security and Compliance Center. Activity logging. Again, they can be integrated into a third-party SIEM or Azure Sentinel. These are the activity logs that are supported. So Mornay, you touched on this, where you could see exactly what logs are presented in that Security and Compliance Center. To enable Office 365 activity logging, you must have an Office 365 E3 or greater. And like I said, it's tenant wide, so you enable it for the tenant. So what can we do with these logs? So we can build flows to alert on key audit events. So here's an example of alerting that can be implemented through a webhook or subscription or polling. Webhook, subscription, or polling approach. I stand to be corrected, but I think the webhook needs a premium connector. And from a CDS perspective, you need to enable the auditing. You enable or disable auditing at different levels. At environment level by setting it in the admin portal. And then there are also entities and field level auditing that you can enable. So this is how you would enable auditing for the environment. It's obviously just toggle switches, audit entities, audit user access, audit read access. And then at the entity to be honest, I don't know what that is, but to enable the auditing, you have to use the classic Solution Explorer.
Sorry, Murphy, I lost you there for a little bit. You were asking what is the difference between the old and a new one?
No. So what I don't know what the classic Solution Explorer is, but apparently the enabling of entity and field auditing has to be done through the classic Solution Explorer.
Okay.
And then this slide just talks to some of the connectors and things that you can utilize to manage your alerts and audits. And here's some examples of using PowerShell to monitor reports or export reports. There's actually a PowerShell script that will download all your assets. And obviously through Power Automate, you can get a list of your connectors. But then what about planned and unplanned platform changes? So things that you don't have control over. So we've spoken about, all the things that you within your environment can control, your users are controlling. You have insights into that, but there's also the platform itself. And we've all seen, I'm sure, platform outages and service health messages where something is not working or you can't sign in. And so you need to be able to monitor for that, not necessarily be able to do anything, but at least you can react to that in a certain way. So you can notify your users there is a service outage on XYZ or whatever, but without some kind of automation, it's very manual. You have to go into the message center and identify what service outages there are, what platforms are affected, etc. So this talks to monitoring the platform status with Power Apps. This is just an example of a service health dashboard message. On the right-hand side, slow organization performance, message center maintenance. So the service health dashboard is an API as well. And so you can actually pull information from the service health dashboard and create Power Automate flows to alert people, send email notifications, create tickets, etc., etc. And that is it from me. So just to review, we just went through some of the analytics that are available to you natively within the Power Platform and the admin centers, and some of the activity auditing that you can get from Office 365 or the Security and Compliance Center, and then the extra functionality that you get from the Center of Excellence and how you can work with makers, ensure that you're collecting necessary audit data. And that is it. I hand over to anybody to ask questions or make any comments. And also thank you, Ewan, for showing us the Center of Excellence, and thanks, Mornay, for extra insight.
Hi, Matthew. My name is Hilton Allison. I'm the director of Cognate. My question to you is, using the Power Automate Analytics dashboards, is there any way we can control licensing and maybe excessive use of runs of Power Automate with notifications through some of the dashboard options?
To be honest, I don't know. I would assume you can, provided you can create a condition or an alert, and anything that can consume that condition or alert can then create an action. With that action, be it a PowerShell or a script to, I don't know what the action you would like to be, but I would assume you could do anything provided you've got the information in a condition or an alert. So the hard and fast stance would be to remove a license, but I think that might be a bit drastic. But what do you think would be a suitable action?
Maybe the question would be is what are you trying to mitigate? What is the concern that they're going to be using? Is it about API throttling, usage?
Usage, yeah, mostly usage, and linking that to pricing and customer licensing. So I guess the question as well is, can you monitor license usage and when it comes to Power Automate and maybe the excessive use?
So remember, license usage is more about license assignment. So for example, if you have a pool of licenses for a certain capability, you assign that to a user, assuming that we're talking about, if you're talking Power Automate, are you talking about the flow license or the user license associated with it?
The flow.
Oh, the flow. Oh, I see what you mean. So in other words, you enabling a process and it's unlimited users, but you're worried about the capacity that's going to be utilized within a 24-hour cycle. Is that your concern?
Correct. And that's specifically moving from Classic to Power Automate. We have a lot of customization sitting in Classic.
Yeah.
With the higher risk of overusage and an unnecessary expense to the client when we move across. And I don't want any surprises. So I guess the starting point would be to monitor that.
Yeah, so you can monitor that and you can actually check the usage it's in the analytics within the Power Admin Center. You can actually track the runs there and actually see how that is tracking.
And is there a threshold where, so instead of having to actively observe it, could we set a threshold and get a notification? Have you tried that?
Yeah, you'd have to build that. The data sits in CDS, right? So you can query that, but you're going to have to build something like a flow that's going to query that, and then you can send an alert, to somebody to go and perform an action. So the analytics obviously is just a means to be able to view and see that you can track. But if you want to do alerting, you're going to have to build something. There is a couple of tools that comes with the COE kit that can help you with that. as well.
Okay. Okay, well, that's a good starting point. I guess I was just looking for thresholds so that the system would notify me instead of me having to actively do maintenance on those tenants.
Yeah. So the link that was put on the IAM trail for the COE Starter Kit, the documentation is pretty good, where it will tell you the different components that you implement and what the features and capabilities within those components are. So just iterate through that list and have a look to see what you're looking for, and you'll see which solution component has actually got the capability in it. And then that's the piece you can implement. Okay.
Great. Thanks very much, Ewan. And also thank you, Matthew, for your presentation.
It's a pleasure. Thanks. Thanks, Hilton, for your question. Great question. Thanks, Ewan, for stepping in there.
All good, bud. All good.
All right. Any more questions?
I think from my side, thank you, Matthew, and everybody that joined. I've really learned a lot. I've realized that one thing is just if you purchase the software, and another thing is, what is the starting blocks essentially, and it's clear to me now, before you let Power Apps loose an organization, you need something like the COE kit, to get greater insights into what actually is happening in it. I think the messaging is clear. We keep on saying the low code, no code, and we enable people in the organization to come up with new solutions and ideas. But at the same time, how do you kind of just make sure that that is done in the right bounds, and not everybody and anybody building apps that does any and everything, right?
Yeah. So I think I can't promise anything, but I think the next session we talk about automation, and so there may be some answers to Hilton's question in that session, where we look at automating, well, the things that we can automate and how we go about doing that from an admin perspective.
I think also just to maybe, to answer Hilton's question a little bit differently, is that, if, for instance, you have a flow that runs multiple times, or there's a huge, amount of flows that's running, maybe look at the different licensing options that's available, right? And the pricing around that. And the reason for me saying is that we do have different licensing options based on the scenario. So it might be better to look at, I don't know, a different licensing option, and gives you better capacity, or even the amount of flows, or unlimited flows, versus paying additional for these flows that run, or even worse, not flows that fail, and those type of things, right? So that's also a different option to look at, right?
All right, thank you.
Also, sorry, Hilton, there's also a different option to look at. So we get Power Automate, but you also get logic apps. So a different option would be to maybe also look at those flows that you built, but more rebuild them in logic apps from a capacity perspective. So that's also a different option that's available, and they do differ slightly, but you would come to the same end result.
That's great. That's good recommendation.
Great. Thank you guys so much. If there's not anything else, then I think I'm gonna stop the recording and close the call. Once again, we will publish this on the Meetup site. The recording, the links, the decks, the references that we spoke about. If there is any sessions that you guys do have topics about, please, we are looking for speakers or even topic suggestions. And it would be great also to get your feedback on, what went well, how can we improve, and it just helps us build a better community and stronger community. But with that said, thank you to Matthew and Ewan and everybody that joined today. And we're looking forward to the next one. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Thanks, Monet. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you,
everybody.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Matt.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks all. Have a good evening.